guys, welcome back to week 3 of XOXO. We're going to be talking about relationships again. This past Sunday at church, I interviewed Donald Miller. He's the author of the new book, Scary Close. And this book has been a book that's really had an impact on me. One of the things he shares in the book that I want to get you guys' opinion on, and we'll maybe talk about it a little bit in our groups tonight. He kind of alludes to this analogy, and I've kind of seen this done in a couple different ways, but he talks about how his therapist basically wrote the word self, right, like that. And he drew a circle around it and said everybody's a self. Everybody has a self. It's who you are at your very core. And then often what happens in life is there's some events. Sometimes this happens in childhood, sometimes teenage years, sometimes in adulthood. Some events that bring shame into your life. So now you have this outer layer of shame that's out here. And then what happens is then you get this thing that he calls, if I can spell it right, false self. Right? And it's this kind of third outer layer that this false self is kind of what we create to protect these shameful parts of us. And that for everybody, their false self is a little different. For some people, false self is they think they have to be funny. In other words, they have to be, hilarious in a group of people to be loved, to be accepted. For some people, their false self has to do with perfection. They feel like they have to be perfect in everything they do in order to be loved and accepted. For some people, it's beauty. They have to just look stunning. If they don't look stunning, they think people won't love them or accept them. And so I think what's interesting is that this false self that we've kind of all created at different seasons of our life to cover shame is something we bring into our relationships as well. And so I kind of want to get you guys' opinion on what is it, why is it that even in the context of our relationships, we're with somebody that we know deeply loves us, why is it that we still tend to hide and kind of pretend to be somebody that we're not? Have you guys struggled with that in your relationships at all?
Yeah, I think it has to deal with some vulnerability. I mean, no one likes to feel vulnerable. It's a scary place. It's uncomfortable, and it's kind of the unknown. It's foreign. We don't like it. And so to strip away all these layers so that someone can see at your core, it's a scary thing, and because people have pasts, some dirtier than others, and we always want to feel accepted. And so to peel all that back and to see if, especially to the person that we love and that we want to be with, are they really going to accept me for me and my past for what it is?
Mm-hmm. That's good.
I think it's also part of this, for me at least, when I think about it, like Jake and I, we've shared, I think, a lot about, like, we've gone past some of the shame, trying to get at, like, our core selves. So we've talked about that past and we've been vulnerable, but there have been times when it's been so frightening. Like, something new will come up and there's a new shame and it's like, oh crap, I'm tempted not to tell him, because then it's going to show that I haven't made as much progress as I thought I have, or I haven't made as much progress as I want him to think that I have, or that I want to believe that I have. It just makes me remember, oh wait, you're still human and you're still sinful and you're still working on this, which stinks. No one wants to think about that. Or I think, at least for me, I don't want to believe that, or I don't want to remember that. I just want to keep looking forward without really any kind of references, or as few references as I can to the past. So I think in addition to not wanting to be vulnerable, I think it's not wanting to feel like you're making progress and always making progress.
And it's hard work. Mm-hmm. It's hard work to expose and then work through that hard stuff that you bring with you from childhood or wherever. And I remember laying in bed with Paige one time, and we're not going to talk about sex, but
I thought he was going there.
I thought he was too.
And telling her, I really don't want to leave this planet without being truly known by someone, and by default, baby, you're it. And we've done a lot of therapy. We've done a lot of work on a lot of things, and I do believe today that she truly knows me, and it's a beautiful, beautiful feeling because she hadn't run away. She really sees all the warts and hadn't run away.
And that's kind of our fear, isn't it? That the other person is going to run away.
Yeah. And I got lots of warts.
Yeah.
I'm slower than Rhodes is, so it just takes me a lot longer to, I guess, trust somebody and be myself. But one thing that he says to me that's so helpful, because I don't show my emotions as easily as he does. And if I'm crying, I can handle all your tears. Or if I'm mad, I can handle all the anger you've got. If I have PMS, I can handle all that PMS. Bring it on. So to know that he's going to be there, that he can handle it, that I can quit trying to be so strong and let him kind of take over for a little bit when I do feel fragile, and that he's going to be there. So,
Yeah. Danielle, I'd like to get your perspective in dating, all right? Because, and Stephen, you chime in on this too if you want, but in a dating relationship, I mean, it's a little different from marriage in that in a marriage, hopefully at that point, you're being able to fully disclose, although it still takes a lot of work. At what point in a dating relationship do you kind of get to that place where you feel like it's important to begin to share your true self and not just your false self? Because when I think of dating, a lot of times I remember dating, there's a whole lot of false self. There's a whole lot of impressing. At what point do you say, all right, I gotta start shedding some of these layers so that the other person really sees me for who I am?
I'll be honest, had you asked me that question years ago, I would have answered it completely differently, but I've been engaged before. I was 3 months away from getting married and realized that the person that I was marrying was not at all who I thought the person that I was marrying was. And it all goes back to that, and I think being on the other side of that, even though I feel like I've certainly been guilty of that myself. Like, I'm a girl. Like, I like to do my hair. I like to do my makeup. I like to make people think that I woke up like this when I didn't, I mean, that's just part of, the way that things are. But I think that going through that on the other side and seeing how hurt I was and how disappointed I was in myself for allowing myself to fall in love with the idea of a person and not the person, it's made me be that much more open going forward, because I certainly don't ever want anybody to, think that they love me for someone and then it be who I want them to think I am. There's always an element of that in the beginning, but I think that, once you start to get to a person or get to a point with a person where there's a connection that's been made and you are, not just dating because you're bored or for sport and you're trying to figure out if this person could be your person, I think it's imperative that way sooner than later you get anything out there that, you think might cause them to run, because if they're going to run 6 months in or 2 years in, and, why waste any of your own time or your own energy or your own effort or theirs,
Yeah.
Just be who you are. And as forgiving as we are with ourselves sometimes with our own flaws, like, we have to have faith that the person that is meant for us, the person that God brings into our life to be our person, is going to be equally that.
Yeah, so how do we, because that kind of leads into this idea of, on the other side, how do we make sure we create environments in our relationships where people feel safe enough, feel like there's unconditional love there, so that they can kind of peel back some of those layers? What does that look like for you guys in your relationships?
I think part of it is that you have to, if that's what you want out of it, you have to be willing to give that. So I know with Lulu and I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that I was pretty forthcoming about just who I am and how I am pretty early on. I mean, within the first couple of weeks probably, if not sooner. I'm crazy. I didn't want that to be a surprise to her. So I feel like that may have helped move some of that process along. Just the fact that she knew that I wasn't holding back maybe gave her the impression that she didn't have to hold back, and I'm glad that you did, because that wouldn't have been as much fun.
And I think he does a good job, because I worry so much about being like, oh no, I'm still making mistakes. He'll come up and be like, hey, I messed up on this today. I'm like, oh my gosh, me too. Like, thank God. Like, I'm glad he creates an environment where I feel like I don't need to be perfect, because I think he's a really awesome person. I think he does things really, really well. So I feel like I'm constantly trying to keep up sometimes. So I think he does a good job of just saying there's no competition here. We're both screwed up and it's fine. And I think that just makes me feel a lot better, safer.
There's no substitute for owning your stuff.
Right.
Congratulations. I mean, there's not. Awesome. And I think the other thing is to listen. We spent almost a decade married before I realized that when I got mad in the morning because I hadn't had my coffee yet and the dog was barking, that it really upset my wife and caused, and my son, both of them to kind of shut down. And I wasn't mad at them. I'm just loud and demonstrative. And I had to hear her, the first couple of times I thought, but when I finally really heard her, I cared enough to change a little bit, maybe a lot. So you gotta listen.
Yeah, that's huge. I think that, this is gonna be a really important topic in all of our group discussions, because I think there's no probably greater human desire than to be fully known and also fully loved. And I think there's probably a lot of you that think that that's not even possible anymore. But I want to encourage you and say that I do believe it is possible. And in healthy relationships, you want to be fully known and you will also be fully loved. Because we can only be loved to the extent that we're known. So I hope you guys will take some time tonight. I know this isn't an easy conversation, but that you'll be brave, you'll be courageous, that you'll have this conversation about what it would look like in your life if you were fully known.